So Nelson, you're good to go.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich.
Yep.
All right. Well, Rich mentioned escape routes. Here's your chance. This is, as Rich mentioned initially, this is not intended to be a resource advisor training by any means. Last week, June and I put on a 3-day course, and it's pretty comprehensive. This is really tailored more as a readiness session, if you will, to coin a phrase, and just kind of hitting on some highlights, some of the things that you have already heard that Lisa covered, Rich covered a little bit, and we'll just kind of touch on those. And as always, if there's additional questions, whatever, do not hesitate to contact myself. I know Lisa and Rich and June, and I'm sure Chris would be more than happy to handle these questions. We can't do it all at once, but one of the things our salutation, we always make sure we emphasize to our READ course participants is when you walk up to the incident commander for the first time, you say, what can I or what can we do for you? And they're either going to look at you with disbelief or keel over from heart failure or have you escorted off the incident. But that's a great way to start things off. You're there to help. You're part of the team, and get things off on a good foot. So we'll start off by just for those who are under issues are going to be, even if you can't find the resource advisor, find the documentation they've been left behind, because it's going to be a super starting point for doing your bear assessment. So the reads will be your friends as a bear team member. And just to kind of briefly go over, what is it that the resource advisors are looking at? Well, one of the things they're looking at is the direct effects. So this is the damage or the impacts caused by the fire itself or byproducts of fire, smoke, for example. So mortality to wildlife, burning cultural resources, soil impacts, smoke impacts, so forth. The operational impacts, as I mentioned, so the taking of snags, dozer lines, fire retardant, killed aquatic species, introduction of weed seeds, trash left on the fire line, and then the indirect effects, which has a really strong connection to bear and bar. So it's those post-fire conditions. So it's erosion, sedimentation, it's weeds, falling trees, altered wildlife habitat, etc. So the objectives in this little section here is I'm going to touch briefly on the important policy and administrative updates for the 2013 fire season, and then important reminders for the 2013 fire season. And those are really kind of based on our philosophical building blocks of the READ course that we teach. And Lisa wanted me to emphasize, is that really being a prepared READ requires your commitment to successfully protect and enhance the natural cultural resources of your own home unit and on any off-unit assignments. And what we like to point out is, if you look right now, even though out west it feels like it's already fire season, there's a lot of training going on with the operational personnel. There's engine guys are getting tuned up and trained. People are going through their annual refreshers. Pack tests are being done. The operational side of things, folks are keeping sharp, and resource advisors need to be doing the same thing. In order for us to do our jobs well during incidents, we need to be committed to keeping sharp mentally, physically, and so this is part of that. But then we're going to give you some marching orders to do once we hang up here, and up until things start catching on fire, which may not be too long in the future. Okay, we've touched a lot on this today, future of the Arduous Resource Advisor, and this is going to be a topic that's going to continue to come up, and part of it has Lisa brought in the HR bulletin. That's a really important thing, and I'm trying to learn more about it myself. One of the things that's being cited as well is just this idea of recurring expenses for folks that are getting Arduous, is paying for physicals, paying for boots. It's particularly an issue in cases where people are getting Arduous and then they're not participating. And June and I will tell you, we've had over 1,000 people go through our resource advisor trainings now, yet when push comes to shove during fire season, we can't find anybody. And that's an exaggeration. We can always find people, but for the number of people we put through, we have a hard time finding people. And so we wonder where these people are, and if even a fair percentage of them are Arduous, then why aren't they participating? And that stuff is costing their parks or their units money, and that's going to bother their fire management officers. So that's an issue. If people are going to sign up, they're going to go through the rigmarole, and they're not going to participate in this era of spiraling budgets, this is going to become an increasing issue. There's also the seasonal firefighter health insurance. There are a lot of seasonal resource advisors. That question was asked. Absolutely. Reads can come from the seasonal ranks. This is an optional thing. You do not have to fill out the paperwork to accrue the seasonal firefighter health insurance. It's available, but the hosting division, so in other words, if you're a resource management person, if you're a maintenance person, that division puts the bill for that. And so we have parks in our region where they're not going to pony the bill. And so there will be no red-carded personnel out of those divisions. And so that's a significant hit on their militia. Now, maybe we look at it as though in some of those cases, those people were going to serve as Type 2 firefighters, and they were going to go out and cut line or work. Their primary duty on the fire line was to be firefighters. And maybe if your primary duty as a seasonal is going to be to serve as a resource advisor, that you might choose to forego that health insurance and get Arduous Read and go out there and do your job. Unfortunately, there's not good guidance, blanket guidance nationally, either in the NPS or interagency-wise. So a lot of this is going to be through negotiation, through your fire management officer, through your direct supervisor, to make this stuff happen. Certainly, we'll provide any input we can from the regional level, but there seems to be a lot of divergence of opinion out there. And then there's the question of the firefighter Type 2 qualification adequate, and that relates to safety. It relates to autonomy on the fire line. Lisa made some excellent points, about whether or not folks should be given autonomy on the fire line. And the bottom line is, you can have all the qualifications in the world, but the people who make the decisions on a given incident are the incident commander and or the division supervisor who happens to be supervising you on that incident. And if they check your red card, they see Arduous and a bunch of operational quals, and they still say, I don't think you're qualified to be out there on the line, I don't want you to be there, you're not going. It does not matter. They call the shots, and that's the way things work. So our mantra in our READ course is always get as many quals as you can if your expectation is that you want to work on the fire line and maybe have the potential to work autonomously. You show up as a light read or a moderate read, the expectation has to be that your red card's going to get checked, and there's a strong likelihood that they may make you sit down, or they may get you an escort. If they can't get you an escort, then you may be spending the day or multiple days in fire camp. So now the catch-22 to all of this is that every order that I've seen come through the system that is not a name request has been for Arduous reads with very high operational qual, single resource qualified. And once I'm done laughing, my laughter subsides because there's about 10 people who probably make that qualification nationwide. We just don't have people like that. And so do we start plumbing the ranks of the firefighters out there who have strong ology backgrounds and could probably be resource advisors anyway? Do we push to have people from resources continue to get fire quals? I don't know what the answer is, but this is something that's not going to go away. There's no good answer, but we'll continue to work sort of on the policy end of things, and I encourage you to work with your FMO, and if you feel strongly about getting that Arduous read, which I feel strongly that we should keep pushing to do that, then you certainly have the support at the regional and national level in the Park Service. Please come to us for that support if you think it's going to help your cause. All right, we also get a lot of questions about all-hazard reads and how that relates to the wildland fire side of things. And the all-hazard reads have come up with their own independent system. and you guys will have access to this, so you don't need to copy down these URLs, but they have their own incident position qualification guide, which lays out explicitly what the requirements are for an all-hazard read. They have a website where you can find the link to that document, and also on that website, which is that middle URL, you can find a link to the All-Hazard Resource Advisor training, which is provided through the Fish and Wildlife Service. So they have an online All-Hazard Resource Advisor training course, which you can go through. And once you've done that, you can become qualified to serve as an all-hazard read. They're also accepting those with wildland fire wildland fire read qualifications based on previous experience and or training. And they have you can download a form and fill that out, submit it to the appropriate dispatch center, and get signed off on that. And then kind of exciting on the horizon, the first Resource Advisor Guide appeared in 1996, second 2004, and then on the horizon 2013, 2014, there should be a new and improved guide. Rich and June, and to a much lesser degree I am hoping to kind of push this thing down the road. But I think that those previous two versions were great for what they were, but things have evolved so significantly, both in fire management and in the resource advising world, that we need something new and a bit more sophisticated. So I think we're onto that, and so look forward to that coming along. And then we'll jump into the read reminders. Again, sort of these big picture things. This is a example of course that we taught. Here we are in Tallahassee, Florida in 2010. We go all over the place, Hawaiian Islands, Shenandoah. We'll go anywhere, as long as we have the money. It's just getting increasingly hard to find. All right, one of the things we wanted to push was this mental preparation side of things, is just creating this personal mindset for wildfire and management response to fire, and this notion of trigger points. And if you mention this term trigger points to fire manager, they're going to conjure up this image in time and space. It may be a point on the landscape where if a fire reaches this point, then they're going to enact some different strategic or tactical approach. And for us, it's a similar thing, as we may track an incident, hour by hour, day by day, month by month. Similar thing, watching for weather conditions to change, again, geospatial changes. And I'm going to throw just a couple of things at you that I'm sort of watching for this 2013 season. One of the big things is this seasonal outlook, and asking you whether anything stands out here. And this is actually kind of old. After this incredibly pervasive high-pressure system that's entrenched itself over the western U.S., over the last week and a half or so, we're seeing high temperatures 10, 15, 20 degrees above normal, and we're already in pretty severe drought conditions. And a couple prescribed burns done in the Sierra Nevada mid-elevation conifer belt, and the burning conditions are looking a lot more like late June than they were late April. And so you can imagine what things are going to be like come midsummer. You never can equate sort of conditions to what the fire season is going to be like, but if the ignitions come, then we could be looking for some pretty significant fire activity all along the western front. So what that tells me is it's going to be potential to be a very busy fire season and a high demand for reads, and those units that are embedded within those areas that are likely to see a lot of fire are going to need lots and lots of help. You're going to see a lot of burnout from resource advisors and bear folks there. Another thing to really bear in mind is this power policy. Federal wildland power policy is very clear that firefighter and public safety is the first priority in every fire management activity. And that there's no exception there. It's absolutely the number one priority. Its resources has a place at the table, but it's trumped in every single instance by safety. And that resource advisors, what we do is we advise. We do not make decisions about strategies and tactics. We provide advice as it relates to resources, and then decisions are made by the operational personnel. And they may or may not, as shown in the next slide, to what extent that they possibly can, take our advice with regard to resources into consideration. And this is how this plays out. So upper right-hand corner is my boss, Robin Wills, who's an operational section chief on a Type 2 team in Northern California. And when he's making operational decisions on a fire, he's looking at fire behavior, he's looking at values at risk, of which natural and cultural resources are part. Then he's looking at his operational capacity. What does he have at his disposal in terms of firefighting, personnel, and apparatus? Then he's going to try to find a strategic decision within that. The convergence of those three variables. So under extremely active fire behavior with high values at risk, let's say homes, people, lots of people, so an urban interface, and then with lots of operational capacity at his disposal, bulldozers, aerial support, they're going to throw a lot of, they're going to attack it aggressively. And what that means for resources is they're probably going to get hit pretty hard. And we're going to, as resource advisors, we're going to have to accept that damage. We're just going to have to do it. Safety is number one. And property is supposed to be neck and neck with resources, but oftentimes property is associated with safety. And so we just have to swallow it. And that's when I look at things like repairing suppression damage, or looking at the bear and bar end of things. When, for example, bulldozers disturb a lot of ground, invasives love disturbance, well, I'm going to defer landscape, resource repair until bear and bar come along. Whereas in a wilderness setting with, mild to little fire behavior, where values at risk are further and farther between, we may have much more latitude in terms of getting the operational section chief, the team's buy-in in terms of taking into account resource issues, and a much better working relationship just simply because they're able to better accommodate the resources at the table, because we're not looking at threats to life and firefighter safety. So it's the importance of finding out where we fit in this realm and providing the input that is meaningful. All right, this is another area that's very important to remember, is that we fit in this kind of strange area. We're embedded within the incident. So, for example, you'll see two resource advisors here. The one on the far left is assigned to the fire line. He works for the division supervisor out on the fire line. We have another resource advisor who works for the planning section chief. And using the chain of command within the incident command system, those individuals are the direct supervisor of those resource advisors. So that division supervisor is legally responsible for the well-being of that resource advisor that's assigned to their division. And so when that division supervisor says, we need to leave this cabin that we've been protecting because the fire behavior is escalating, then we leave it. Now the interesting thing about READS is that we also have a line of communication directly to the agency administrator. So if you're in a park, it'd be the superintendent. And on bigger incidents, there might be an agency representative who has been assigned to represent the interests of the agency administrator. That individual is allowed to come directly to us and communicate directly with us. They don't give us marching orders with respect to, if the division soup says you leave the cabin, you leave the cabin. The superintendent can't say, no, you stay there. You're directly supervised by the division supervisor. But certainly the park individuals external to the incident management team, can communicate directly with the resource advisor without breaking the chain of command. And what this does effectively is creates extreme tension, or can, for the resource advisor. It puts you in this very precarious situation sometimes where you're pulled between the team and sort of the practicalities of fighting fire, and then the political, social needs of the superintendent. Parks in many cases are created for very specific reasons, and sometimes those values at risk can be threatened by fire or fire operations. And superintendents often may not have a good understanding of how incidents are managed, and they'll want to see those values protected at any cost and not understand the inner workings of the incident management. So they'll be giving you a hard time to do everything possible, and you have to balance the practicalities of what actually goes on during incident management and not overstepping your bounds, remaining an advisor, an impartial advisor, while still representing the message of the agency administrator and or the agency representative. It can be incredibly difficult, but I know you're up to the task. And then as far as addressing conflicts go, just some really good quick hitters here. Being proactive. If you see issues arising, get in there and fix them. Using diplomacy before authority is always useful. You know, technically, you're given some authority by the superintendent or the agency administrator assigning you as the resource advisor for the fire. But you're far better off trying to resolve things diplomatically. Resolving disagreements at the lowest appropriate level. If you have an impasse with a division supervisor, you're out on the fire line, or a firefighter, take it up to that person's supervisor rather than taking it all the way up to the superintendent. And that feeds into using the ICS chain of command. Just follow the org chart up the chain. Don't go out of it. And if you take things up to the incident commander and by following the chain, and there's still an impasse, which happens, go back through the line officer, go back through that agency administrator, try to work it out. And invariably, you will have issues if you do this long enough. Make sure you document those. And that way there will be your side of the story as well. Here's a great example of using authority of the resource. The one on the left, you never want to use. You know, I'm the resource advisor, I have a delegation of authority that empowers me to make these decisions. Or, because taking advantage of the natural opening will eliminate the need to fell 20 trees, the minimum necessary action to ensure that when we leave here, there'll be no lasting impacts from our activities. The additional thing there is it'd be less exposure time for firefighters. Falling trees is a very dangerous activity, so you would definitely have the ear of the division supervisor on that fire. And then there's dialing 911. You know, it's knowing your limitations. Very busy fire seasons, it's extremely easy to get overtaxed. There's way too much to do, and when you have a big fire, you need to scale up appropriately. We don't fight big, complicated incidents with tiny, firefighting organizations. We scale up accordingly, and our resource advising organizations need to do the same thing. And so we need to bring extra folks in. We do it. As things ramp down, we let folks go. So we scale in concert with the firefighting organization. Like I said, we have lots and lots and lots of resource advisors that have been trained up out there, lots and lots who are willing to come to your incident and help you out. So I expect to hear calls, especially from the Pacific West region, when you guys need help. We track these incidents, and so don't be surprised if Rich or myself or Lisa were calling you saying, hey, what do you need? And I think you'll find incident commanders and those on incident management teams to be receptive to this kind of thing. Because if you're not providing them with good service, it affects them as well. It's not going to be a big issue to get folks on the fire line, as long as you have a plan. And then avoiding those breaking points. If you've been on a fire for 21 straight days, that's too much. You need to sit down and get some help. And then the physical preparation. And Lisa mentioned, keeping in physical shape is one of the things. But there's a little more to it than that. It's meeting the needs of your home unit, being prepared to assist others, and it's all about objectives. You have to know what your objectives are, and it's these things like resource advisor guides. If I show up at your unit and I say, well, what are your issues, and you hand me your fire management plan, it's 400 pages long, I'm not going to read it. If you hand me a 30-page condensed version, I'm going to be real happy with that. And in 20 minutes, I'm going to have a really good idea of what's going on out there. And you hand me a hard drive that has all your GIS data, I'm going to be even happier still. And in the best of all worlds, you might have preloaded your strategic objectives and management requirements into WFDSS, the Wildland Fire Decision Support System. which we've been asked to do. It's a decision-making tool. It's an online program, and some parks are going to use this more frequently than others will, but we've been asked to preload this stuff, and that way if we get an incident, it automatically populates. Once the fire's been plotted, this stuff will just automatically pop up. And so here's just a crude example. We might see in our California desert parks where we have desert tortoises. So our strategic objective might be minimizing operational impacts of fire management activities of desert tortoises. And the management requirements, this is not comprehensive by any means, but assigning a read to all wildfires in tortoise habitat, no off-road vehicle travel, removing trash, no chemical retardant drops. And so it'd just be a nice reminder, and then you're off and running as a resource advisor. You have a good laundry list of things that need to happen, and then when an incident occurs, then you can populate for the incident specific. Maybe there's 2 divisions that are in tortoise habitat, 1 that isn't, and you can begin to specify exactly what the requirements are out there on the fire line. So it's a pretty useful way to get organized. Another important thing that you have to do that the teams will be looking for when they show up at your unit is the suppression damage repair standards. You want to have them done right now, or at least before fire season. And what this is the standards that you want to see followed when suppression impacts occur within your unit. So in other words, repairing fire lines, be it hand line, dozer line. How do you want to see helispots rehab? How do you want to see dip sites rehab? How do you want to see roads repaired? Fire camps, et cetera, et cetera. Teams can't afford to hang around anymore. It's too expensive. And so providing them with this when they show up is maybe not even too early anymore. So they know what to expect, because as soon as it's practicable, they're going to be out there doing those repairs. So you need to have an idea what you want to do. There's tons of examples. If you've taken our course, we've given you lots of examples. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get a hold of me. I'll send you a bunch. And then finally, just some other report reminders. Lisa mentioned IQCS and Ross. Get your fire management officer, and then there's the fire management program or fire program management assistants, who are basically, to call them secretaries would be an insult, but they're the program assistants that help the fire management officer. They're usually the ones who are in charge of doing all this stuff. Get to know those guys. It can be a super huge asset to you. Make sure you do your refresher, do your capacity test. Rich mentioned the delegation of authority. Make sure that mentions resource advisors on there. That's the way you get a read on there. That was asked whether the team cannot refuse to have a resource advisor if there's a delegation of authority that says you have to have a resource advisor. Review and update your home read kit. Both your physical stuff and your digital data. Make sure you dig out your line gear and your red bag. Like I always find my dirty Nomex from last fire season that I forgot to dig out. And then, as we love to say, be safe and have fun. And that is it from our side of things.
All right. Thanks, Nelson. So while we're changing gears, Nelson, go ahead and change the presentation over to Chris.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, we've got a lot of questions. And most of them, again, have to do with training and qualifications. And we've obviously confused you guys on the issue. Haven't done a good job of explaining it. First of all, a Bear Team member or a resource advisor in the fire world do not have basic standards and qualifications like they do for the operations positions. So in fire, you have positions that are called like division supervisors. They're in charge of a particular division or area of that fire. They have accomplished certain tasks that make them qualified. They've completed what we call task books, and those task books have been signed off by somebody who's qualified at that level or at a higher level. Well, we don't have that for Reeds and Bear Team members, and that's partly by design. And I like to use the desert parks as an example in California. So if we have a fire and it's burning through tortoise habitat, and there's nobody on our read list that's qualified to address those issues, but there just happens to be one there in the park, we can muster them up right then and there, get them the required personal protective equipment, and then escort them out on the fire line. However, that being said, we would prefer that you do meet these more stringent requirements so that you have that situational awareness of a firefighter. It all goes back to safety, and so that you can work independently on the line. And I'm sure you still have a lot of questions on that. So again, get in contact with us, and I think it'd be better if we had a one-on-one dialogue and talked you through with that. Yeah. But also talk about it with your fire management officer. Okay? Anything you want to add, Nelson?
No. If it sounds confusing, it is kind of. And we actually spend probably a good 20 to 30 minutes talking about that very subject in our resource advisor class. So the fact that you're confused does not surprise me. So absolutely, one-on-one is probably the better way to go.
Yep. Okay, I got a comment that you were talking about the insurance, and for the Association of National Park Rangers, it's a I believe it's a nonprofit, but it's a .org, ANPR.org. They do offer affordable insurance, so that's another option.
Okay.
Got a comment or a question: what contributions can seasonal employees make as part of their teams without being directly on a fire line? And that is a good question, because we do bring in people who don't meet those basic requirements but can contribute in a meaningful way. Oftentimes we need people to work at the incident command post to help shepherd things. GIS specialist is another good example.
That's huge.
Yep. So yes, the more complex an incident, the more we're going to need people in the camps. So you can contribute and not be out on the fire line and not having those basic requirements. Okay, the next one, let's see. Here's a comment from our friends in the all-hazard community. We've been working very closely over the last couple of years to put together all-hazard training. Some of this is a result of the oil spill down in the Gulf, and was partly funded with funds after that incident. Now there are plans to put together 3 modules for all-hazard resource advising. The first one is available and is online through DOI Learn. And if you're not a Department of Interior employee, I can send you a link on the back door to get that online training. But it's very good training. It provides that basic understanding of what an all-hazard read does, and then we're in the process of developing the intermediate module, just about to the point of delivering to the folks that actually put it together in the online environment, and then we'll start working on the advanced one. So that is available through DOI Learn. Just once you log in, search for all-hazard resource advising. Okay. A question as far as how does this stuff get paid for? The resource advisors and Bear Team members are ordered up through the dispatch system, through the fire organization. And if you're not a regular fire employee, your base 8 hours and your overtime and any other costs like food, lodging, transportation, that is all paid by the incident. And so you get what we call a resource order when you're getting dispatched, and it's going to have that accounting structure that you would put into GovTrip and into your payroll system, so that your home unit's not having to pay those costs. Everything is paid for by the fire. Somebody's asking for a copy of Lassen's fire suppression repair plan. Yeah, we can do that. Just why don't you send me an email and ask for that, and I'll get it to you. But yeah, we've got examples and of all kinds of stuff. And I've got a lot of it posted on the Park Service Fire and Aviation SharePoint site, and I'll send links to that to you. That's also in that document that I sent out as part of the invitation. Okay. And I think I got most of it covered as far as questions. Documentation in the bear den is another comment. Yes, we need to document everything because some of these significant events come back to bite us. You know, why did you make a certain decision to manage a resource in this certain way? So that stuff needs to be documented because a lot of what we prescribe is done in an interdisciplinary environment with all kinds of people chiming in so that we can come to a consensus agreement on how to handle a resource issue. So documentation is key. Looking through hands raised. Carl, I'm going to unmute you. Carl Brown? Go ahead, Carl.
Hey, thanks, Rich. Yeah, the documentation in the bear den is also a great opportunity for folks that may not be Firelight qualified, but they want to work to support bear, and that's certainly one way we could use it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other hands raised, and I think I've gone through all the questions. I'm combining a lot of these, obviously, because several of them follow the same line of questioning. But if I haven't answered your question, feel free to contact me. I'll be answering emails and phone calls after this webinar for a few days. I always do, and that's what you pay me for. Okay, Chris, turning it over